I have a client who got stuck, who was literally in situationships for 7 years, right? Situation like she hadn't, none of the people she dated ever went past like the 3-month mark. They never wanted to be in a relationship. Every time she would just like be heartbroken about it. And it really chips away at your self-esteem. So, I think it's like, so for women who are really struggling with finding that they're stuck in these patterns of dating.
Hello, Tania. Thank you very much for being here.
Hi, Natalia. So excited to be here.
Thank you for being interested on being interviewed and for telling us a little bit about who you are and what brought you to this coaching field. So we're really excited to have you and to learn more about you. So to begin with, maybe it would be good if you would like to introduce yourself. How do you define yourself? How you see yourself? And who is Tania?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So I'm Tania Hansraj. I run a coaching program called Embodied Dating Lab. I am a self-love and relationship coach. I've always sort of believed that, finding love is an inside job. So I really kind of focus on helping women really heal those like past relationship patterns, past traumas, their attachment styles, and help them get to a place where they're, happy and on their healing journey are able to attract the right type of partners into their life. As I was kind of deciding on my niche as a life coach, it was just a problem that just kept coming up with all the women I was talking to. I was talking to a lot of, high achieving women who've done well in their careers, but really kind of struggling in the love space. And I actually started as a self-love and boundaries coach, and it's kind of pivoted a few times. And this is the latest pivot where we are right now.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. And who is Tania on a personal level? What do you value?
Yeah. For me, I feel like one of my biggest values is definitely like growth and personal development. It has been a 7-year journey for me. So I think that's a big one. Another one is just adventure. These last few years have just been really focused on what started on my journey as like physical health and then moved into mental, emotional, spiritual health. And personal development is part of my fabric every day. I have a practice every day. I'm learning. I spend the time invest into myself every day. And the days that I don't, I always feel a little off. Outside of that, I'm also a sound healer, a breath coach, a yoga teacher. I really just love all of these different things. I trained in all of it just because I practiced so much of it in my own life. And really, it was like first more so for me to be able to do things at home. Like, for example, the pink full moon just passed, and I did like a little sound healing and journaling for myself, which was really beautiful. So personal development, huge. Big on adventure. Last year I lived in Bali for a little while, which was a really amazing experience. And yeah, I'm the friend who will like jump off a cliff and get in a cage with a great white and dive, but then also like go to yoga class. Yeah, I try to bring people along with all that stuff. Yeah, big in adventure, big into being outside. I live in Los Angeles for that reason. I'm a big sun buff, a beach buff. I'll be outside as much as I can, whether it's hiking or in the forest or at beaches. And yeah, outside of that, I've really cultivated a really beautiful group of women these last few years that are just so close, and really having like that sense of belonging has been really special for me. So I spent a lot of time with like a small group of women and with my family. I'm actually traveling today to Texas and then Tulum for my sister's 40th birthday. So I'm excited to see my family. So yeah, travel, adventure, personal development, wellness, those are all parts of my core values. Yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for sharing more about with Tania.
Yeah.
And how would you define a fearless woman?
Yeah, great question. I think a fearless woman, like just on the most highest level, is someone who kind of is not scared to go after what she wants, whether it's, you know, leaving a bad relationship, whether it's, you know, taking a leap into a new job, whether it's, you know, trying like a new food. I mean, it could literally be anything, you know. I think there's like a very, very broad scape. And I think different people have like different levels and different, you know, you kind of have to try what makes you like just step into the discomfort, but just a little bit, you know, because for some people that it's really uncomfortable. Like not everyone's going to be like, okay, I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning and go jump in a cage with a shark. Like that's not normal. You know? So but so often we like compare ourselves to people who have done these things where you're like, oh, I really want to get to this point, right? Whatever they're doing, like that's my dream. But like taking those like little steps in a meaningful way and like just coming a little bit out of your discomfort, I think is actually a much more mindful and intentional way of approaching it. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. So it's like understanding which are our own challenges and understand which is our comfort zone and stepping out there and like moving forward in our unique pace, right?
Yeah, just a little bit. Because I think, yeah, the pace will depend on the person, but also, I also think that if you're looking at whatever the end goal is, you're never gonna, you know, it's gonna be really hard for you to get there, right? So if you're able to just be like, okay, how do I do this a little bit? You know, like let's say you want to launch a business, it's like, what is like one thing I can do every day to help me get, like in 3 months, you would have made so much progress, right? So really kind of thinking about it that way, like whatever your pace is, yeah, sure, if you can speed it up a little bit, great. It's fantastic. If not, just go at the pace. Sometimes you're going to take a step back too, and that's totally fine as well.
Beautiful, beautiful. And what brought you, like you mentioned already, your niche, right? And what brought you into self-development? Was this something that specifically happened in your life?
Yeah.
And on a personal level, that it made you decide to jump into like self-discovery and spirituality?
Yeah, for sure. So for me, in I think early 2018, so in 2017, I graduated from my MBA in LA and I moved up to the Bay and I was working for a big tech company. And I had another finance job again. And I was working. I remember I went on a trip to a London work trip and it was like a crazy season. And I was working like London hours and US hours and Asia hours and just nonstop. And I've always kind of been like, I always prided myself on being the hardest, not the smartest, but the hardest working person in the room, you know? And that was the last, I think that was like finally kind of caught up to my body. And I ended up being, when I came back to the States very quickly after that trip, I was just like feeling really unwell and I started going to the doctor, and that ended up me being in doctor's offices like 3 or 4 times a week for a few months. Things got pretty bad. They ended up like sending me home because they said I was a liability to be in the office. I wasn't allowed to drive to the office anymore, and things just started getting worse and worse. At one point, the doctors thought I had like 26 different illnesses and they couldn't figure out what was happening. It was bad. It was bad. And I didn't really know how to, like, what anything meant. You know, I think I was like very confused. So I ended up taking disability leave from my job. Started a chronic pain clinic, which was my first experience of group therapy, which was kind of interesting. Eventually they got a couple of diagnoses. It was like one autoimmune condition, couple of like nutrient deficiencies, some other stuff thrown into the mix. And I was like, okay, I was pretty, and I hope this is not triggering. I mean, it might be triggering for someone, so please forward this part. But I was actually pretty suicidal at that point. Things had gotten really bad for me really fast. It was a combination of the meds, the brain fog, like really feeling. I think the biggest thing for me was like I couldn't see the light at the end of the tunnel. Like, you know, with autoimmune conditions, with chronic diseases, you kind of feel like that's it, right? You know, you're going to have it for the rest of your life. I felt like I was going to be a burden on my family, on a future partner. They told me that I would have fertility issues, just kind of the whole nine, right? And it was just a very scary place to be. And I just felt like I just didn't really know like how would things ever get better. That just felt like that was going to be my life, and that didn't feel like it was possible for me to live like that anymore. Slowly I ended up kind of, you know, they ended up diagnosing the right thing. I got on the right meds, and then I ended up really kind of changing my lifestyle like completely. I unfortunately was a 15-year smoker. I quit smoking. I quit drinking at the time. I, started like change my lifestyle, my food. I've been like, gluten-free, dairy-free, sugar-free, soy-free for like 6 years.
Everything free.
Everything free. I'm free. No. I prioritizing self-care and stuff like that. And that wasn't the point when I got into the spirituality practice, but that was the starting point for me, because for me, it started very personally on like a physical and self-care level. Once I started kind of working on that, and that like after a few months, I was able to kind of get my head above water pretty quickly. I remember like working out was like really bad for me. So I ended up joining, it's so funny. I was in like an aqua aerobics class. And everyone else was like 80 years old and
and you
and me. And I was like, oh my God, I'm like dying. But I'm young. So like 2 months later, things started progressing, whatever. So things started moving along. But that it was like actually a really hard place to be. And yeah, eventually, I started on that path after a while. It was actually really funny. After I think a year after that, I came back to LA. I was living in San Francisco at the time. And I started Instagram for the first time. I just never wanted to have Instagram. So my friends were like, oh, you're leaving, you need to get Instagram. I was like, fine. So I got on Instagram and I started kind of just like randomly swiping. At this point, I had like not really added a bunch of friends. And I started coming across Shetty, just randomly started popping up on my feed. And at the time, he was going through like a kind of similar to what happened recently. He was going through people kind of questioning, whether he was a real monk, etc. And I was like, who is this person? I'm so intrigued. And then I started learning about him. Okay, I really feel like his presence is very calming. Like I find him very calming. So I realized that he was on the Calm app, along with a bunch of others, and like the Daily J and stuff was on the Calm app. I believe it was already on the Calm at the time. And that kind of started my journey on the spirituality side at that point where I'm like, this is kind of interesting. I knew I struggled with anxiety. I'm like, I feel like this person's kind of very calming. Let's see. And so I actually started my spirituality journey very squarely with him. And that's why when I ended up going into the life coaching thing, like it was like a no-brainer for me to go to his school. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you so much for sharing, for being so open and transparent. Truly appreciate it.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that it's going to inspire a lot of people, a lot of women who are watching this. So thank you so much. And what would you say that you have learned about yourself, like when it was really hard and you were finding like you were struggling, right?
Yeah, I think like there was a lot. I think firstly, one of the big ones was like, I think I always just thought that for the longest time, I thought work was really important. I really did sort of really disregard rest. I used to pride myself on like being a 4-hour sleeper. And I'm like, I'm like a full functioning person on 4 hours, which is a big deal because I was never into caffeine. So I don't know how I did it for as long as I did. I've never been a caffeine speaker. But I used to pride myself on that. And so I think, and I lived in New York for a long time. So it was a little bit in the fabric of the culture there as well. Like working in finance, living in New York, there not being that many women in the space. And so I think that was definitely something that I had to kind of unlearn. And I'm still unlearning. I'm still only up to 6 hours, but I'm working on it. So I think sleep and rest, I think I take a lot of rest now, maybe not as much sleep still, but like rest is like a big part of my lifestyle. Self-care is a big part of my lifestyle. I think resiliency was probably another big theme for me. I really did think like things were about to end at that time. And I was like, I don't really know what to do with that or like how to process that. So like I feel like I weathered a lot in my life. I had a lot of big traumas in my life, but like that period, I think just because it was so extended, it just felt very long and like I didn't know how to break through it, but I'm very grateful for it. I like say this too. I'm very grateful to actually have an autoimmune condition because you know what? It's a no-brainer for me to make healthy choices. For other people, like healthy choices are hard. For me, it's like I don't have like, it's not possible for me to not make a healthy choice, if that makes sense, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
And I would not have changed my life or been where I am if that had not happened, right? So I think like gratitude related to that was sort of, I think, really big. And then self-advocacy, honestly, like traditional medicine or like Western medicine really failed me at the time. I really, really struggled with it. And like Facebook groups honestly saved my life. Like I went into Facebook groups, I was like a fly on the wall, just reading and listening to things. And I started to really learn about everything. And like most time I walk into a room with a doctor and they're very impressed with like everything I have to say. I'm like, it helps that my sister is a doctor, but I just really like learned everything about myself. And I started looking into, I think I learned how to look that there's more than one way. You know, I started looking at alternative medicine, functional medicine and stuff like that. And so not only did that help me on my health journey, but also learning that there are other ways, whether it's your career, whether it's like you can always try something else, right? If something doesn't work, it's always possible to try something else. And then I think the last one is like the big part, like I said, finding relationships, finding love is an inside job, like really kind of creating that self-awareness. That muscle was hard for me in the beginning. Actually, it was hard for me for a long time creating it. And then once you have it, you can't shut it down. It's like, it's sort of like, it's like a freaking loud stereo, right? It's like everything you look, you're aware all the time. Over years, you can kind of tune it, right? But it took me a long time first to turn it on and then to be like, this is always on. What do I do with this? It's really hard, you know? And I think that was sort of the beginning of everything for me. It really allowed me to, I think it's so funny, over the last few years, I have friends that tell me like, I'm like literally regressing backwards. I'm now, I take more risks. I do more stuff than most people will do in their 20s now. You know, I'm like, all right, I'm just gonna pick up and move to Bali in 2 weeks, or I'm gonna do this other thing, right? So it really allowed me to kind of like trust myself and know that trust myself and the universe, that everything kind of works out, you know?
Yes.
As long as you're really like, as long as you can really like listen to yourself and like know that everything is kind of working out in your favor, and really believe and really kind of have that self-awareness where you're like, okay, this doesn't feel good. Okay, this feels good. I'm going to try this. If it doesn't happen, failure is not a big deal. Okay. But in the past, you know, I was like a heavy perfectionist, heavily anxious, like failure was like not in my book. So I feel like there's been a lot in these last 6 or 7 years for me.
Wow. Incredible. I acknowledge you for all that you've been through and all that you could learn as well from all the different stages. It's incredible. And so you mentioned a little bit like, but what was like brought you into this your unique niche, right? Like to helping women. Tell me a little bit more of if there was something, or there was like people that were coming to you and mainly related to this specific problem, which are like, how can a woman know that they will need someone like you?
Yeah. Well, I'll share a little quick about how I got into life coaching, because I think it's interesting. I was talking to my therapist for a while, being like, okay, I really want to help people. And it's really funny. I was talking to her and saying like, there's some like, I really want to help people, but I had a lot of imposter syndrome about it. And also I was like, okay, the big thing in my life that I've transformed was this health thing. So I was like, it'd be kind of cool to like help women who struggle with autoimmune conditions and help them with like self-advocacy and financial wellness, because you spend so much money on personal health and functional medicine and stuff. It's actually kind of ridiculous. Like I think I've spent $20,000 a year on my personal health. When you get chronic illness, like that's what happens.
Yes.
And also obviously like the mental, physical, and emotional part. So that was actually my initial plan, and I was thinking about it. And I went to February of 2023, I went to Thailand with my sister, and I got my tarot cards read. And this lady was like, listen, she's like, you have this thing that you're kind of really interested in, you're kind of passionate about, but I don't know why you're so scared of it. There's a lot of like, you're going to do well in it. There's a lot of prosperity for you. You need to just take the jump, and you already know what the first step is. Like, you just need to do it. And I was like, okay. So I remember I was talking to my sister about it, and she had been right about some other stuff too. So like a week later, I think I came back and I signed up. I had my interview on February 14th. It was my personal present of self-love to myself to like invest in the Shetty coaching program. but I felt like the interview itself was sort of like really inspiring, but at the same time, it felt like I was having an existential crisis based on the conversation we were having. And I'm like, okay, I think I'm supposed to do this, you know? And so, yeah, it was like, that was, and, you know, it was really fulfilling doing that work. And so that's how I kind of got into the coaching space. In terms of the niche itself, as part of the work I was doing, I did some market research, and I started talking to like a lot of women, some women in my circle, some outside my circle, and a lot of them kind of talked about two areas. They were all women in their 30s and 40s talking about really struggling with dating and like navigating dating nowadays and finding people who actually like are, you know, want to be in a committed relationship. And number two was boundaries. And like feeling like, and also to be fair, I was talking to a lot of women of color. I was talking to a lot of South Asian women, Middle Eastern women, Hispanic women, women who have like strong family values and very strong, connected, close families, which also tends to breed more boundaries issues in my experience. So I had ended up kind of going down the boundaries path at that point because my one of the biggest transformations for me was obviously my self boundaries with my own health, but also having boundaries with my mom and in dating. Because as you can imagine, South Asian moms very like, let me be in your business all the time. And so learning to kind of have healthy boundaries with her was sort of part of it. So that part is still a part of my work now, because I do think having boundaries is like the foundation of everything. But in terms of how I ended up in this, so those are the two things. And as I was sort of, it seemed like the boundaries thing, though, it's one of those things that, like, for example, people don't know that they're burnt out, that they need a burnout coach until after they're burnt out, you know? So like a lot of people don't even realize that they need boundaries. They don't have the language for that. They don't really understand that needs to be, even at this point, people don't really understand it. And so, and when I was talking about boundaries with women I was coaching, still the dating thing was just constantly coming to the top. So I ended up just sort of transitioning into this variation where I'm helping you with that. But honestly, the foundations are all the same, because it really all does come from, you know, yourself and like having like become, whether it's like, okay, I'm the one who's emotionally available, whether it's like I'm the one who struggles with anxiety, you know, all those things called the foundations, because you attract in, right? We're so like, you're so programmed to attract in, okay, like let's say your parents were not around so much, and so you find the hot and cold, the emotionally available, like sexy, and you find the guy who's like secure and stable boring, you know, and you're like, I would never go out with this person. I don't want like the nerd or the geek or the boring guy. I want the guy who's like, you know, hot 1 minute and then I don't know what he's going through, or he's 6'2", or he's tall, or he's, you know, whatever it is. And so, but then these same women are finding like I have a client who got stuck, who was literally in situationships for 7 years, right? Situation, like she hadn't, none of the people she dated ever went past like the 3-month mark. They never wanted to be in a relationship. Every time she would just like be heartbroken about it. And it really chips away at your self-esteem. So, you know, I think it's like, so for women who are really struggling with finding that they're stuck in these patterns of dating people who are unavailable, or dating people who can't commit, or dating people who are like the same person in like a different body, right? Yes. Or a lot of times actually the women that I work with have actually done some therapy or some personal development, because I do think that self-awareness stuff is kind of important in the beginning. Yes. But they might know, for example, that I struggle with being emotionally unavailable myself, or I struggle with anxious attachment myself. Or I'm like, you know, I get really anxious around a partner, whatever it is. So really, it's like, okay, if you want to break out of that pattern of dating the same type of people, and you really want to be in a secure, lasting relationship, that's when, you know, you need to like, you know, hire a relationship coach, because you really do need someone to help you get, because you're never going to be able to break the pattern. Yes. If you're like the pattern yourself, you know? Yeah. Yes. Yeah.
So to make sure that the audience understand this, right? So your clients are women who want to have like a healthy relationship, and they value a lot their relationships, but there is like something that is stopping them from having that relationship, right? So it's, you help them, you support them to understand what is it that is stopping them from having that relationship, right? It's like, which patterns do they have and where are they coming from that make them choose maybe not the partner that you would like to have, right?
Exactly, right. So it's like, it's, usually I work with women, like successful career women in their 30s and 40s who are tired of dating the same type of people. They really want to get married, or they just want a long-term partner. And they just are really struggling with finding that. And they're not sure why. And then maybe they've tried different things too. Maybe they've tried different dating apps. So they've tried, I don't know, they like try to meet people offline, but they're really struggling with finding the type of partner that they actually desire to find.
Okay.
And I help them. Yes, I support them through understanding why that is. I support them with working on their patterns, healing it on a subconscious level, healing their attachment style on a subconscious level. We do a lot of work on like what I like to call the core four. So we do work on the conscious level, on the subconscious level, on the nervous system level, and on the energetic level. So we do work kind of on all of these. So you can really kind of like, there's no way if you did work on all the stuff that you wouldn't find, what you're looking for. And then for fun, I throw in some aligned dating strategies as well, because women are so interested in finding new ways of meeting the type of men that they want to meet, right? So once you've done all this work, it's like, let's actually get out there and start meeting people, open up your funnel, bring in the right type of people, and then really try to understand, okay, like, are we compatible long-term or not, right?
Yes. And what would you say that is like, out of these 4 categories that you've mentioned, which one do you think that it's usually the one that needs to, you need to pay more attention to, or the clients need to work on more?
Yeah, I mean, I think all of them, but I'll tell you, to me, probably the most important are the subconscious and the nervous system, because most of us, like when we think about a long-term partnership, you actually want someone that you feel safe around, right? Like that's a core basic need.
Yes.
But most of us have very dysregulated nervous systems, right? And this is just a matter of like society now. And so, and like the way you grew up, right? So like if your parents were hot and cold, and when I say this, people can get a little like, like my parents are very present. That doesn't mean that it's really like, it doesn't mean that, I'm not saying they're a bad parent and there's no shaming or blaming going on. But sometimes as a kid, you may have just perceived it that way, that they weren't around so much, like maybe you had a new baby brother, and then your parents were focusing on them a little bit more, which makes sense. But then you started to feel a little bit more isolated, right? So it's really more about like your perception of something. Yes. And so your nervous system, then if you perceive your nervous system, your parents as not being around so much, like your nervous system is used to like, okay, 1 minute they're hot, 1 minute they're cold, right? And that's what feels normal to you, but that's a dysregulated nervous system. So it's really important to do that on the nervous system level. My clients are obsessed with all the subconscious work that we do, because it really gets to the root of things. Yes. That's always like the favorite. So we do a lot of different types of work. We do tapping work. We do just a lot of different types of stuff. But subconscious work is really important, because like, let's say like most women I know on a conscious level will say, I really want to find a partner. I want to find a long-term partner, right? But then they'll go on the apps and they're like, okay, oh my God, this guy's cute, I'm going to swipe, even though it says, oh, I don't really know what I want. Or it says like, I'm only looking for something casual, right? Yeah. So your subconscious mind kind of takes over and starts sabotaging you in the moment, because because it's like, okay, actually, like, it's okay for this to be like another hot and cold type of relationship. It doesn't matter, right? So it's sort of, I hate giving the diet example, but I'm going to use it here. It's like saying, okay, I really want to be in a diet and I want to lose like 5 pounds. So I'm going to eat a salad every single day this next week. But then Monday rolls around and you're like, I'm committed, I'm starting on Monday. Monday rolls around and you're like, okay, my coworker brought cake to work today. Tuesday rolls around, I went to happy hour with my girlfriends. I had a couple margaritas and I had some takeout on the way home. Like every day there's something, right? Yes. Your conscious desire was, I want to do this thing. But subconsciously you're sabotaging that, because you don't actually subconsciously believe that, whatever your belief is, that you're not worthy of that, you don't deserve that, or whatever the core belief is. So the subconscious work is really, really important and really powerful. And that's really that will always be the thing that will either keep you from getting the thing that you want, or sabotage the thing, and so that you go back to whatever your old state was,
Yes. Thank you. Thank you. And what about the energetic level? So do you think that there is a connection as well with the unconscious aspect?
I do. And I think, I think it's really important to do the work on the energetic level because, and a lot of the work that I do actually with women is like generally on your energy body, but also like a lot of feminine energy work. Because a lot of the women, again, that I meet really want to be with a partner who has a little bit of like, for in general, they want someone, they're like so sick of making decisions and like running their whole life that they want to
Yes.
help them do that more so,
Yes.
But it's really hard because most of the high achieving women I meet, they're like really stuck in like this like hyper independence, like I don't want to ask for help, all this stuff, right? And so it's really important that, and then what happens is one of two things happen. You meet a man who's either in his feminine energy, who's like, I'm gonna let you take the lead. Why don't you plan? Why don't you pick? Why don't you like, oh my God, I actually have a client. She was like, I have decision fatigue. I don't want to make any more decisions.
I'm laughing because I can so much relate with that, it's like
so yeah, they meet a man who's like that, and then they're like, oh, I don't really want this, right? Or they meet someone who's also in the masculine energy, and then you kind of butt heads a lot, right? There's a lot of argument that happens, like there's a lot of conflict that happens. And so in order to find more of what you want and to have that, type of polarity that you're looking for, it's really important to be more embodied, like in your feminine energy, right? So like break through the hyper independence and be able to receive, be able to ask for help. And I've been there too, by the way. Like, and sometimes I'm still there. Like I used to be the girl where I would like go to the grocery store and I would just like walk around for 45 minutes to try to, I won't ask anyone for help. I'm just like, I'm going to figure it out. Or like,
I will find it.
or like with my partners, I'm like, if I can't do it myself, like with something in my house, like I can't do it myself, I'll hire someone to do it for me instead of asking you to do it, and so it actually causes a lot of issues because like if you did bring a man in him masculine energy, they really feel like, that you don't think that you don't need them, or that you don't think that they're reliable, and can actually really take away at their self-esteem, and it's not about like just the silly stuff like, oh, a man needs to be needed. It's more so like it can actually really affect the dynamics of the relationship.
Yeah, for sure.
So we do a lot of like embodiment work and somatic work to really help women kind of dip down into their feminine energy and the energetic level. And that's why I love this program that I have now, because when I was looking for stuff, I found things to either help me like on my patterns or to help me in the feminine energy work. And a lot of the feminine energy work that's out there is very like, do this to play this game to win him back, type of thing. And I don't really like all of that, because I just don't think that you can actually play games with someone for like your whole life, right? Like you don't want that.
Yeah.
So this program is specifically like for those. That's why I work with like high achieving women who have struggled, because it's helping them with their patterns, but it's also helping them with the embodiment work so that they can actually bring in someone who is available and in their masculine energy, if that's what they want, right? Emotionally available and in the masculine energy and ready to commit. So yeah.
Beautiful. Thank you. So for wrapping up, and because we could keep on talking about, I'm really curious, and I could keep on like asking you a lot of questions. But what would you say that, what tip or a piece of advice would you give like a woman who is interested on starting this journey to understand what is stopping them from having this relationship that they would like to have?
Yeah, I mean, I think like, honestly, I think there's a couple of things. One is, I do think the self-awareness is the beginning of everything, right? If you can see, I actually did bring on a client who, when I first started working with her, she was like, everything is fine. It's fine. I'm good. Like I have no issues, whatever. And once we were able to kind of like dig deep and build a rapport, she was able to kind of see, okay, like these are the things that, like really kind of open up and see all of that. And I think that the reason was just the lack of self-awareness,
Yes.
And so I think really cultivating like a self-awareness practice, and a good way to start with that is like actually some of the spirituality work can actually really help you if you're open to that. I think that's like a big one. The other big thing to really work on is self-worth and self-esteem, and that is a little bit of a big umbrella, but it really is an important, a lot of reasons why we like settle for people who are less than what we want, or we settle for people who treat us badly or a narcissist or whatever it is because we don't really believe that we're worthy of something better, right? Whether it, and the language could be, I'm not good enough, I'm not worthy of healthy love, my needs don't matter, you know, whatever your core belief is. So a lot of that it does come down to like the subconscious belief, but also having like a very deep worthiness wound, you know? So really working on self-worth is really important. And fun tip for that as a way to get started is Jimmy Lima just came out with a new book. It's called Worthy. It's absolutely fantastic. It has a lot of worksheets and stuff in it as well. Can really help you start to really work on your self-worth. Jimmy Lima, for those of you who don't know, is the founder of It Cosmetics. She's fantastic. And, you know, Oprah and stuff have all kind of like wrote like the forehand for her book. So definitely check that one out. And then in terms of the energetic work, the energetic body of work, of course, I already talked about spirituality, but if you want to really kind of learn how to embody feminine energy a little bit more, it's really important to just kind of cultivate things that allow you to kind of sit back in softness a little bit. So the two things I would suggest for that is one, really finding something that allows you to drop into your body a little bit more. Maybe it's movement, maybe it's dance, maybe it's, I have a friend who I've loved seeing her feminine energy journey this last year. She really got into florals, like flower making. So she does like bouquets like once or twice a week. And that was actually really helpful for her to drop into that. So just an example, if you're not into dancing, which I love, like a heels class or like a pole dancing class, super fun way of doing it. Or you can just do it in your bedroom with some music on. The second thing I would say is like really getting to, and this goes back to the self-awareness part, really getting tuned into like what you need. So maybe asking yourself a question a couple of times a day, like, what do I desire? What do I desire? And what that does is it really allows you to, again, tap into self-awareness, sit back into softness, and also really, really build that relationship with yourself and with your intuition, right? Because you're really asking yourself, like, what do I desire? What do I want? What's going to give me joy in this moment, right? So anyway, those are a couple of things, you know, I would try on the self-awareness side, on the worthiness side, and on the feminine energy piece.
Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything that you have shared, for being so open, for sharing how you've been through all your journey. I really enjoyed it. I'm really grateful for being able to talk with you. And tell us, where can people find you?
Yeah, thanks so much, Natalia, first of all, for having me and for the thoughtful questions. I always love your energy. I think you're like a fun little ball of energy, so I enjoy speaking with you.
Thank you.
You can find me on Instagram at embodied.dating, embodied.dating. I'm also on Facebook under the same name. I'm also on TikTok under the same name, but Instagram is where I like to hang out. So come join me. I am always on posting content. I also do lives once a week. Yesterday, if you want to check out my live, yesterday I did a live on actually tools to help you regulate your nervous system and to help you manage your anxiety that I just talked about a little bit earlier. So that's a really great way to, also another practice for you to start to incorporate how to really manage your anxiety and regulate your nervous system so that you can start to feel safe and more secure.
Beautiful. So there is another piece of advice there. Go check her Instagram and you will find a lot of tools as well.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And yes, stay tuned for the audience because there will be more interviews coming as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Natalia, and thanks to Fearless Women.